As Rich Mitch says, excuse me whilst I hydrate. Welcome. We are on our 10th episode of Effluvium, and for tonight's installment, I have a very special guest. And she is Tammie Arata of Tammie Loves Fragrances. I must have another tab open. We'll take care of that right now. I sound good, I guess. She is a very special guest and a very special person. Very special person. Who am I right now? She is she is a good friend and a fervent and voracious enthusiast of fragrance, and she'll be joining us shortly, along with my two cohorts and regular panelists, Ryan of Perfume Bonfire and Adam of Spoken Ethers on IG and Fragrantica. He is a regular writer for Fragrantica. You should check out his stuff. So I made an important announcement. Oh, sorry, I came in a little hot on my mic here. I'm going to move this little baby out of the way here, a little bit away from me. I'm sorry about that. A little hot. So I made an announcement this past Friday that I was diagnosed this past week with asthma. So if anybody hasn't watched my video or I haven't told you directly, yes, it is true that I was diagnosed with asthma. And this is just a week in on my diagnosis. So I'm still at the very beginning of processing this. So just bear with me. There's a lot of things that I already know, and there is much more that I do not know. So this will take weeks and months of my figuring out the best way to care for this diagnosis and what are going to be the best practices for me in my particular situation as an asthmatic. And I will be keeping you all abreast as to what I learn over the next few weeks and months as well. So just in case people don't think this is some sort of little micro publicity stunt to get attention, I really am an asthmatic. This is my Symbicort, see, and this is my spacer, and this is my albuterol. So I really do have asthma. I do the Symbicort twice in the morning and twice in the evening. The albuterol is as needed if I find that there's a flare-up or an irritation. Just wanted to get that out of the way. This is legit. So I'm not sure if anybody viewing had not seen the video, but now you know. And one of the topics for this episode, and Tammie was actually gracious enough because I always offer our guests to choose whatever topic topics they'd like to discuss, and she suggested the cautionary measures in this hobby or passion of ours. What can we do to make sure that we have a healthy relationship with this fascination we have with scented fumes, and what we can do to avoid there being any sort of complications with that. So we'll be discussing that, and not to fear, we will also be discussing the fragrances themselves. We will definitely commit a lot of time to that during the next 2.5 hours or so. And I will still be doing my first impressions. I do have 3 of them here. I'm going to visit the chat here and see who has come on in. I just want to let folks know that I do have Buy Me a Coffee if you are so kind as to help contribute to my content, to this YouTube channel, and to projects that are going to be in the pipeline. It would be greatly appreciated. You could purchase one at $5 or you could purchase more. Any sort of help would be greatly appreciated. Buy Me a Coffee at www.buymeacoffee.com/Joseph Kolb P. Thank you. Yes, we are sentient. Thank you for dropping by. I know it is awfully late where you are, so I really appreciate you're being here at least for the first few minutes. So just stay on for as long as you can handle it. I know that you might be very tired very soon. Hello. Oh, very nice. Good to see you, Philip. Scent of the Day, Zershoff Richwood. Niall, hi. Good to see you. Hi, Will. Unfortunately, I cannot see that emoji from within the StreamYard studio. So I don't know what that is right there. So unfortunately, somebody's going to have to tell me what that emoji is. Same with Niall, too. I think he left a nice little emoji there as well. Hi, Antonio. Welcome. Welcome, Prof. Melvin. We do have a great time. We had a great Effluvium on Instagram earlier this year, and there was a fiasco where most of it wasn't recorded. So now this time around, we we will have actually an archived Effluvium episode, which will be great. Hi, Dan. Thank you for stopping by. I know it's pretty late where you are, so it really means a lot to me that you're tuned in. Hey, good to see you. Skels. Hi, my friend. How are you doing? Oh, well, thank you very much. I really should check that out. Thank you so much. It's a waving hand. Okay, great. And hi, Tucson. Good to see you. All right. Okay, so we'll get started with our first impressions, our 3 first impressions. We're going to be starting with Matière Première. I know very little of this house, but rumor has it is sort of one of those venture capitalist sort of houses that was distributed to influencers. So take that as you will. I don't know too much more about it. I just know that they were everywhere for a hot minute. Alex, the Perfume Temple, was gracious enough to provide me with this sample. The name is Radical Rose. Radical Rose. You know it's a sophisticated scent if it's called Radical Rose. It sounds like, Bubblicious flavor. So we're going to find out what this one smells like, or just get the first impressions of what it smells like. Next, we have Rania J. Amble Loup. Now, I am pretty picky at this point about my ambers. I already have a good amount of ambers in my arsenal. And the thing about ambers is it's kind of hard to build upon that theme innovatively without it seeming to be reductive. Like, I smell newer ambers, and then I immediately think of the ambers that really made huge impressions in niche perfumery or just in perfumery in general. So the more that I smell, the less likely I'm going to be head over heels for it. But I wanted to give it a shot. Speaking of ambers, the next video that I will be doing this week is 7 stunning ambers, my 7 favorite amber fragrances. So that will be this week. The next is another one that was provided to me by Alex, a Perfume Temple. This is from 8 and Bob. It is called Provence. And I know absolutely nothing about this one. Provence, I'm kind of wondering, is there lavender? Is it going to be, very French, herbal, floral, pretty, aromatic, maybe some fresh mown hay. I don't know. Provence, that's what I'm thinking. But we'll see. So without further ado, I will get things started. Okay. Curious about my opinion on it. All right. What's your favorite? Well, I know that, Will, you have very good taste, so. Okay. All right, I'll open this little box. Let's see. Radical Rose. I will spray. It is a little baby atomizer. I will spray this on my right hand. It's rose. But is it really radical? Let's see. This really reminds me of an incensey oudi rose that has been done over and over and over and over again. It's been done over and over again. And while I enjoy that, I don't really feel moved. Like, it's good. If I was in a pinch and I was feeling this sort of vibe, and this was sitting around. I mean, and of course, this is just the first few minutes. I know. I mean, this is just a very, very initial impression. I would have to agree with you here. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of that because I'm getting like it is like a patchouli incensey kind of rose. It's a bit brighter than Portrait of a Lady. Portrait of a Lady's all right, a little overpriced for what it is, and I say that as somebody who loves a lot of Frederic Malle, as overpriced as it can be. But I just didn't really find it truly innovative for a patchouli rose. And neither do I find this really truly innovative, but it's nice. It is competently done. It's a bit fruity, Damascone heavy, greenish. It's not bad. A bit redundant, but not bad. I'll leave that out of the box. There's no need to put it back in. I'm going to be visiting it again. All right, next is the Amber Rania J Ombre Loup, which I will put on my left hand. Another spray. Ooh. Hello, my friend. Thanks for coming by. This is a little late for you, too. I'm glad to see some of my folks in the UK are tuned in, knowing that it is after midnight. This is actually kind of interesting. This is a bit more of an animalic or kind of chewy, sticky, sweaty kind of humanic. I kind of detect something that reminds me of this certain labdanum extraction called Amber Sweetie. And Amber Sweetie, I first learned of it through doing some ad copy stuff, some write-ups for Hermitage Oils in the UK. And I was graciously provided with a pretty significant amount of this Amber Sweetie. And there's something really dry and old woody, old book kind of bluey. This is actually kind of good. I was expecting to be like, oh, here we go again, another amber. Ooh, the benzoin and the labdanum and the vanilla and maybe some herbs and some spices and maybe some woods, maybe some sandalwood. Okay, great. Been there, done that. Have experienced this many times over, but this is actually a bit different. Oh no! Oh no! Oh, there we go. Hot again. Maybe I should turn this. No, I will be very self-disciplined. As I said, I have many ambers as it is, and I actually have 2 samples of this, and that should go a long way. But it smells pretty good. I like that it is not a sweet amber at all, and it doesn't go in sort of like that. The sort of oregano kind of direction, like some of them do, especially like Ambre Sultan, which I love for that reason. And it isn't too, like I said, like there is some sort of like labdanum in here that reminds me of the sweetie, Amber Sweetie. Like it's not like your typical sort of lamb. It's not like it's dynamone, which is another kind, or hydrocarbo resin, or just flat up labdanum absolute. I think okay. So honestly, I think since I've been sticking with this, if you notice the Radical Rose, I was like, okay, that's good. Moving on. But this one, I'm hesitating here. I still want to figure it all out. Oh, fuck my life. Like, it's gonna, like, maybe I need to get rid of one of my other ambers to include this one in my life. We'll just have to figure that out later. But I'm really liking this one, unfortunately, for my sake. So that one is really good. Okay. Lastly, we have Provence from 8 and Bob. But first, I want to just sort of visit some of the chat here before I get a little too behind here. Let's see. Okay. Good to see you here, Alex. All right. Only Johnny Depp is sick of Amber. Oh, no. And if that's coming from you, my friend, oh, God. Because you and our tastes are so aligned. Oh, my goodness. Birch tart, yeah. Yeah, I could see that. Oh, I do like hydrocarbon resin, definitely. Yeah, it's wonderful stuff. I think it was really used to great effect in La Couche du Diable from Serge Lutin. Hello, my friend. Good to have you here. Okay, all right, we're a little caught up here. And next will be Provence. I've learned to put things more so on the right hand because I tend to lean a lot with this hand. Thank goodness Envelope is on this hand this week, unlike that atrocity that I had last week where I just kept on leaning at this hand and feeling just like I was about to retch. I forgot what it was, and I'm glad that I forgot the name of it. I want to forget that it existed. It was ghastly, it was heinous. Okay. It's Provence. Ooh. That doesn't mean I've immediately fell in love seconds in, but it's just a really pleasant citrus opening, heavy on the bergamot. Bright bergamot, really bright bergamot, bright lemon. This is like a classic style citrus aromatic. It's kind of reminding me of like Eau de Galant or like Trophée Lancôme. And I love that kind of stuff. Yeah. I think this is the first week where all three of them, at least in their openings, were at minimum pleasant, at the most really compelling. Like every past week, there's always been one where it's like, what fresh hell is this? But thankfully, these three have not harshed my mellow. So that's the three first impressions we'll be revisiting. Those at about 8:15, 8:20. We'll see how things are on my skin. So, all right. So now we're going to start bringing in folks. I see that Adam is not backstage. Hopefully he'll be joining us soon. So once he comes in, we'll add him to the panel. You really have to try Diaghilev. You will adore it. By time, the price, I'll try it, but I probably won't buy it. Hi, Fernando. Thank you as always for your continued support. You are a great human being, and I am glad to see you here. Okay, we're going to start with bringing in my good friend Ryan. Hello. No warning. There you are.
Hello, Joseph. How you doing?
Oh, it's about time. Oh, it's so great to have no technical issue on my end. Like the past 2 weeks, like the first week, I couldn't see anyone, and then I could see people, but they were all 20-second delay. Now things are back to normal, so it's pleasant and great to see you. A lovely sweater there. It looks cozy.
It's winter weather setting in.
Yeah, and I went ahead and I purchased the Holy Mountain from Pickwick's Mercantile.
Well, I don't want to say that's the equivalent of supporting charity, but I like Pickwicks. I like what they stand for. I like the particular perfumes they go out of their way to curate. They pay attention to a lot of independent brands that otherwise wouldn't get attention. I respect that. I'm always happy to purchase a scent from Pickwicks and keep that machine going.
Pickwicks is wonderful. So for the viewers out there, Pickwicks Mercantile is a shop in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and they sell all different sorts of stuff for personal affect. Shaving stuff, soaps, teas, candies, different accoutrements, all sorts of stuff, potpourri, candles, and they have a sizable selection of fragrances, including some of my favorite houses. I mean, they have Santa Maria Novella, I Profumi Florenzi, they have État Libre d'Orange, La Tisane, and the list goes on. Just great curated houses. They have excellent taste in what they carry. They have a website that they don't really update. So I wish I could tell you could visit the website and you could see their whole stock. But if you're looking for something and you're not sure where to find it, it wouldn't hurt to give them a call. They're great people. And if they have it in stock, they'd be more than happy to take your payment and send it to you. So that's Pickwicks Mercantile in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. I, upon the recommendation of Ryan, had decided to go ahead with the Apotheker. How do you pronounce that? Apotheker Tep or Apotheker Tep?
Tepe? I have no idea how you pronounce it. I have no idea. Apotheker Tepe. I don't know. I've been saying it a different way every time I say it. But the Holy Mountain is the fragrance I told Joe he had to try.
Which immediately makes me think of the Jodorowsky movie, a very famous movie for those who are into more avant-garde film. And I feel like the fragrance sort of matches the name somewhat. It is almost Kabbalistic. It's a beautiful fragrance. The best smoky, I agree with you, Ryan, with what you said on your recent video. I agree that it's one of the best smoky scents because it isn't, a barbecue campfire kind of scent. It really smells like, burning, like burning bushes and foliage and something just like a little bit more organic in a way. And I don't mean organic as in like it's an organic natural perfume, but like it's just there's a naturalism to it that's almost arresting. It's beautiful stuff. So I appreciate the recommendation, and I was an immediate fan when I tested it at the store. So
I'm so glad. I'm always happy when a recommendation works out, but this is also a fragrance that I smelled immediately and felt a strong emotional connection to. Right off the bat, I was like, this is going to be something that's going to be a substantial love affair going forward. So happy to kind of share that with you, Joe, and everybody else should try it. It's from Apotheca Tepe, however you say it, was a line that was discontinued, but it did get a lot of attention during its original run, and then it was resurrected by the person behind Pineward Perfumes. And so is now continuing to go forward with new scents in addition to preserving a lot of the back catalog. So the Holy Mountain is one of the back catalog scents that has been resurrected and is in beautiful shape, as we'll tell you, because we have the latest release and it's sensational.
It's remarkable stuff. I just I feel like it is a fragrance for those who want a visceral experience. It's like what our good friend Derek was mentioning on his stream the other night. I thought he made some astute observations on on the different types of fragrance enthusiasts. And I think that Holy Mountain would be for the one who wants like this visceral, experiential kind of fragrance. It's not going to be a daily driver kind of like functional fragrance at all. It's for you to really reflect and just be present with it. It's beautiful stuff. Good evening, Jonathan. Thank you for joining us. And also, I want to thank my guest for joining us because I'm about to have her come. Oh, there you are. No warning. There you are. Good to see
Aloha.
you.
Hey, Ryan.
Hello, Tammie.
How are you guys? Hi, Joseph.
Hi. I
So
love
you
to.
mentioned Pineward. I was listening to you, and Ryan mentioned Pineward, the brand, and I fell in love with that house actually about a year and a half ago, and I tested a fragrance that haunted me called Glühwein, and it was a holiday released scent. And I wrote to them and said, "This is no longer on your website, but how can I get it?" And they said, "It's seasonal. We only release it for 3 months of the year, and it's going to be at the end of November. It'll be released." So thankfully, I'll get to have it.
That's wonderful. I need to explore Pineward more. I keep hearing that I need to try Pineward, that they would be a match with my sensibilities.
I could see that.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. I need to take the time to sample.
And I love pine and conifers. They're among some of my favorite notes. So I have to get on that and experience some of Pineward. I've heard some great things. What he was able to do with Holy Mountain, an existing composition, and whatever he did to keep the integrity of that composition with whatever the formula was from the original perfumer. That sounds promising, and it probably reflects very well on him and his own creation. So I think I should try them out. And also, I see here that some others are fascinated with the house itself and are looking to try more here. Jonathan, which he has excellent taste as well. And I do have a feeling he appreciates the coniferous stuff from our discussions on some more vintage stuff that features pine and anything pine adjacent. So tonight, where shall we begin? Because we were talking about some of the possible hazards of not enjoying perfume responsibly. I thought that, Tammie, maybe you could start with one of the things that was first and foremost in your mind when it comes to that topic.
Well, let me first tell you that I'm wearing a fragrance, and I picked this one specifically for Joseph because it is a vintage bottle of Eau de Calandre by Paco Rabanne. And this is one of those bottles where the atomizer, it's a pressurized atomizer.
Yeah.
That just, if you hold it down, it just doesn't stop.
Yep.
It's an EDT. I also have the vintage release of the EDT in a splash bottle. So these are the two same, one splash, one's atomizer. And I started thinking about, you know what? I wore them both. One's on the right hand, one's on the left. But back in the day when we were splashing like crazy, this was like you were taking a bath in this.
Mm-hmm.
And how many noses got messed up and things created in your body going, no, don't do that. And we did. I mean, talk about overspraying. This was overspray times 10.
Yeah.
So I don't usually use in my splash bottles, but if I do, I don't splash them on me. I don't do it in that sense.
I say better a dab than a splash. You do some dabs.
Yes.
Dabs.
Dab.
So I want to kind of give people a breakdown of how I need to change the way that I wear perfume until I figure out how to navigate my diagnosis. So for now, one of the things that I'm especially trying to avoid is having anything within my range, within my route of respiration. So until further notice, I do not spray on these pulse points. I don't spray under here. I don't spray on my chest or under my shirt. It's among some of my favorite sprays, unfortunately, but my health comes first. So I don't want the direct breathing in from right here. So what I've been doing is the only place above my chest that I will spray is behind the ears, because it's not in the direct route. and on my hands and forearms. And it's working out well for me. Also, another thing that I've been doing is I have easy access to a door out to the outside. I just take the bottle and I spray and have the door open and let it diffuse outside. So it's not really closed. It's not really closed in, especially since I work in this office. So I've been doing that as well. Ryan, I wanted to ask you, have you ever noticed in your wearing fragrance that has there ever been a fragrance where it affected you physically? And that's not limited to, respiratory, but, a skin reaction or a headache or something. Have you ever experienced anything like that?
I've definitely had things that would lead to headache. That's not uncommon. Things that were very persistently sharp or strong or nauseating. I've definitely had fragrances that made me feel a little bit nauseous from how overpowered they were. But I would say I don't have it often, but there have been a few cases where, especially with particularly strong fragrances, if I have applied in the sort of like respiratory region, it can give me a slight, not quite like throat tightness, but enough that it's not a pleasant experience. So I've definitely had that experience. Thankfully, no skin reactions. I've never had a skin rash. I've never had any sort of thing like that. But that I tend not to, what you actually described as your like application method going forward, that's actually how I tend to apply perfume in general. I don't really apply under my shirt. I don't apply around my neck. I apply on my hands, forearms if I'm wearing a t-shirt, or kind of like backside of the neck, kind of like behind the ears back here a little bit. For that reason, because I've had perfume that kind of just it just kind of gets in the way and difficult.
It can kind of seem kind of suffocating even. Yeah.
Yes.
Depending upon what it is. I know one time I did that with one fragrance, which I really love, Estee Lauder Cinnabar.
Oh.
And and this is long before I had any signs of asthma. Like it was overwhelming. I just couldn't handle it. I felt like I was seriously smothering myself. Like I was stuffing myself in a Cinnabar scented pillow. Like it was just so, and I love the fragrance, but that is testament to the fact that I think there are some fragrances that are just not meant to be over applied. Like
I think so. And I found for myself too that I'm generally able to enjoy the fragrance with more clarity when I don't over apply. Like when I over apply and overindulge, I do have the tendency to go nose deaf to a perfume very quickly. So just personally speaking, I found that it's better for me to apply to areas like my hands or forearms where it's a little bit away from my nose, because I'm able to enjoy it with a little bit more clarity. Otherwise, I often find that, by hour 4 or 5, I'm starting to lose track of where the fragrance is. And, I'll walk into a room and, my wife will tell me I smell very strongly still. So something's still happening, but I'm no longer able to detect it. So that's another consideration. That's less health related, less well-being related. But I think I have found often with fragrances that sometimes where I was like, well, I'm not getting a lot from this. If I apply less of it, sometimes I'm able to detect more of it, which is a kind of interesting paradox.
I think it's an interesting paradox, and one that I find frequently as well. Is it's almost like there is this there is this canceling out, that your senses are so overwhelmed that you can't pick apart the different striations, I guess, of the fragrance. It just ends up being null. It ends up that anosmia that you experience from wearing too much. And it's a vicious cycle, I think. And then this culture of, got to spray a lot, overspray, that it actually is like a self-fulfilling prophecy. like, I got to spray more so I can smell good and I can smell myself. And then you end up developing the anosmia and you spray more. And in the process, any new person that comes into your space that you encounter is what on like, like what is going on? This is heinous, awful. I need to, a big part of this is I do want to talk about how I'm not too thrilled with the new culture of overspraying for myriad reasons. And not only because before I go further, I don't know what happened to Tammie. I hope Tammie will return. I noticed that she disappeared. I'm keeping my Instagram open in case there's some sort of technical issue. I'm noticing that she's not here, and I'm like, wait a second. But in the meantime, before I yammer on any further, I want to bring our other panelist in, Adam. He's been patiently waiting.
Hey, everyone. Hello
We're
again.
Finally, all together.
I know. Thank you for your patience and with my goings on the past couple of weeks, and obviously great to see you again, Ryan and JJ. Can't wait to do another live. It's always fun.
And hail, the gang's all here. We have Tammie back.
All right.
Great. So yeah, overspraying. I felt like as part of this discussion, I felt like it was necessary to touch upon that. When is it okay to overspray? When is it not okay to overspray? You know, I feel like it has more to do with the type of fragrance that you're dealing with, you know?
It has a lot to do with the fragrance you're dealing with. I mean, overspraying a bombastic, you know, like something like Tuscan leather is a lot different than overspraying an eau de cologne. If you want to overspray 4711, have at it. It's fun. I do it all the time in the summer. That's a great fragrance to overspray, but don't. But for me, this is an underrated concept. I think in this space is, I think etiquette is important. I've always valued etiquette and situational appropriateness very much in my life, the way I conduct myself and the way I like those to conduct themselves around me. I love that people wear fragrance. I want people to wear fragrance. I think that's exciting, but it would obviously be terrible for everybody if everybody just oversprayed whatever they were wearing and you had 10 people in a room that are each wearing 12 sprays of whatever bombastic creation that is, whether it's something like Koros or whether it's something like the latest Mancera, whichever it is.
Red tobacco.
That kind of room is going to be like nuclear apocalypse for anybody that walks into it, and it's not going to be a very pleasant engagement. I think there's a phrase that has floated about. I have no idea who always says it, but like a great fragrance is something that's like discovered, and I think that's always been an appealing idea to me. Is like I would love folks to smell what I'm wearing, but I would like them to be something that they kind of discover as they're interacting with me, not something that they're like, who's this jerk? And he's like, I'm 10 feet away, and they could just like feel the cloud rolling in.
Yes, the sillage cloud that is 10 yards ahead of the person. That cloud comes in before the person enters the room. It is better for fragrance to be discovered than it is to be announced. I 100% agree with that. I wanted to get to this comment right here. My wife never sprays on skin because many fragrances can be endocrine disruptors. It's a possibility. You know, I think that moderation is so important. You know, for those who are like, well, I wear 7 fragrances in a day and I spray 20 of them on my skin, 20 sprays in the skin. And when that dries down, I'm going to do another one and another one and another one. That could probably lead to some possible disruption of some stuff in your body. I mean, I'm not trying to scare people. I just think that this is something to be aware of, you know, like there's a difference between enjoying something and taking it to a point where it may be overexposure. That is the key word. That's the key word, is that irritants, and fragrances can become irritants. I'm sorry. I noticed that the views are not as great tonight, which is fine. Maybe some people don't feel comfortable with this conversation because it draws it's putting a magnifying glass on something that we love. So I know that this might not be an easy conversation for a lot of people, but I think it is just really important to examine how we're enjoying this, how we're wearing fragrance, and how often and in what ways. Like, really take a look at that, Tammie, I want to get a little bit more of your input on that as far as like application and that sort of stuff.
So I took a beginner's perfume class some years ago, and they come in essential oils. You get the absolutes and things like that. And recently I got some absolutes that were from Darren Allen, and he tinctured these things. And somebody had asked me, how do you use that? Do you just apply it directly on your skin? And I went, no. You never want to put a direct like tincture of a rose absolute on your skin. I mean, you'll probably burn yourself, but it made me realize not a lot of people know this. And I took a perfume class. So, something that you learn in class, but it made me realize, this is something that we take for granted. That we know because we're kind of fragrance addicts, but not everybody does. And just like food, it's what you are, what you eat, and keeping healthy in that way. It's the same with fragrance. Your skin is the largest organ you have on your body. So you take care of it. I mean, as soon as I turned 50, I was like obsessed with skincare, like obsessed. So I wish I had started a lot earlier, but I didn't. And the same goes with perfume. I'm going to be, because of Joseph, I'll probably be learning a lot more about caring about your fragrance and your nose and your senses and things that will go away if you don't take care of them. So I always like getting educated all the time. In fact, one of my favorite things to do is get educated on artists and music that Joseph introduced me to on Instagram. And then I go listen to these things and I'm like, I never knew there was such music.
Oh, I think that not to go on a tangent, but you bring up something like, as somebody who creates content for people, like I think it's important, even in our undying love for fragrance, to have a palette cleanser. And that's why I always like to, even in my reviews, sometimes I like to refer to literature or music to kind of steer it in a different direction a little bit, and to point at how things sort of tie together. That would be a great topic for another time, but I appreciate your pointing that out. Like, that's what I love to do. I love palette cleansers. My whole weekend is a palette cleanser. I think you know this, Tammie. Like, I have fragrance-free content.
Yep.
On Instagram, I'm like, nope, I don't wear it on the weekends, and I also don't discuss it on the weekends, because it's like I need that mental palette cleanser and a physical palette cleanser, and I think you also make a good point. Think of fragrances as meals. Think of it as food. Your skin is consuming this. So there are things that taste good that we can just feel like orgasmic about because it just tastes delicious. And we can eat a portion of it, or we can gorge ourselves with it. And we can eat several times a day and eat large amounts of it. And we think about what are the long-term effects of that, so we can apply that sort of, that's analogous to perfume consumption.
I love pumpkin pie, but I only eat it once a year.
Yeah.
And that'll be in 2 days. And I love pumpkin pie.
It's like me with pecan pie, and pecan pie is like a heart disease on a plate, but I love to have a slice of it. But imagine if we were having a slice of it every day, or maybe 2 or 3 or 4, and then equate that to say, I'm going to spray 40 sprays of this very strong fragrance. And then 6 hours later, I'm going to do it again.
Yeah. It has a parallel meaning. It's what do they call that when you gorge on something? You are glutton. So it's gluttony in another sense.
Yeah, gluttony in the spiritual sense, it is sort of like a gluttony,
Yeah.
and then gluttony is also unhealthy for you spiritually.
Very.
But then you have the physical health effects. I'd rather respray midday versus actually overspraying. No, I don't think it's the same thing, and I'll tell you the reason why. Because when you overspray, you are probably taxing maybe your respiratory system, maybe your skin, whatever, with the high impact of the first, several minutes that alcohol based fragrance vapors, all at once. It's actually, I think, smarter if you want to continue wearing the same fragrance throughout the day to do a little bit of spraying. And then when you want to touch up, do it a few hours later. I think that's fine. As long as you're not doing 40 and then a few hours, another 40 sprays. And the Clandestine Laboratories, great house. I do need to have him on here at some point. He's a great guy. The sense of smell is so bizarre. Imagine if seen objects or heard sounds just completely disappeared or distorted in the same ways as familiar background smells do. Yeah. Smell is, smell and our receptors, we're still beginning to scratch the surface on how that even works.
You know what I learned recently, Joseph? I fast every once a month. I fast for 3 days. And during fasting, my sense of smell is heightened. I'd probably say at least 40%, maybe 50% more than normal. And when I did some research on it, I found out that in a primitive way, when you don't have food, all of your senses are heightened because you need to hunt. So how are you going to find food? You got to smell it. And so then when you don't have food, your sense of smell gets very triggered.
Well, similarly to how if you lose any one particular sense, they say that other senses are supposed to be heightened most of the time anyway. I'm sure it's not a hard and fast rule, but...
Yes. I know somebody who is blind and he smells everything. And when I was pregnant with both my daughters, I had something called hyperemesis, and you can only get it as a woman and when you're pregnant. And it is the most horrible experience in my life. And my sense of smell is so strong. I have the sense of smell stronger than a dog. And I could smell people, and it's horrible. And I could smell their dinner from like 2 days ago, and it would make me throw up. I threw up the entire time I was pregnant. I could smell through doors. It was a horrible thing to have this like bionic smell. But that only happened when I was pregnant with my daughters. Thankfully, it ended the day I gave birth to them. But it is not a pleasure to have a heightened sense of smell. It really isn't.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer it in this way where I can just smell, what I want, and not this thing that's forced into me, because smelling somebody's food from 2 days ago inside their body stinks. It's just...
Yeah. And there are some people who are, depending upon what they consume, it really just exudes from their perspiration.
Oh
my God.
Yeah, I had my vegan people smelled the worst.
Oh no.
And then my friends who were Korean, they were the worst smelling people. And I would tell them, no offense, but do not come in my office, because they eat fermented kimchi, and the vegan people use a lot of curries and spices in their foods.
Yeah. It is known to really come out of the pores. A lot of certain spices, a lot of things that have certain aromatic components can get released in perspiration. I know I have an issue whenever I eat raw onion or garlic that hasn't really been cooked very well. And I don't smell pleasant when I eat those things, much to my chagrin, because I love to eat onion and garlic. So I have to avoid it, because I have a partner who will get very angry. And I can only imagine what other people would think if they smell me. Whether or not I have a fragrance on, I can only imagine what the combination would be to other people. So Jonathan says, not sure it's a culture outside of our very small community of fragrance lovers, because day to day I rarely run into people wearing fragrances at large. And I have to say that's a good thing, that it isn't a mainstream thing. to have an overspraying culture. I think it's still kind of an irresponsible thing to promote that at the expense of maybe other people out there who may not be the kind of fragrance enthusiasts that we are, or have certain sensitivities like asthma or COPD or other types of sensitivities. I think thinking outside of our own head, our own, thinking like, what kind of impact is this going to make if I'm going to be on a train or a bus? Because often people are spraying and going. The first thing that they do is a commute if they're not driving. I mean, driving, I guess, is a different story, but if you're doing something like that and you're in close quarters with other people, that to me is nothing less than an assault on their senses. If you're over applying, if you're overspraying. And I stand by that. I'm sorry. I know that people are proud oversprayers, but I don't know.
That's just rude.
It's rude. it's just like, what's the character from Full House? How rude.
Well,
moderation.
Also,
yes, go ahead, Adam. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. So, that's considering the people outside of the fragrance community, if you will. But think about the people who are new to it, right? The people who are discovering the greater sphere of discussion surrounding fragrances. What do they typically see when they first get here? Much of the time, they'll come across folks on YouTube or in Facebook groups or any number of mediums. I'm not trying to blame any one particular medium here. Just to say, though, that there's a lot of misunderstandings and things that we don't scientifically have a firm grasp on about scent and how it works, and how fragrances behave on different skin types and all that kind of thing. So I think there's a real and present danger when the community does start kind of espousing certain things over and over again, if they aren't particularly accurate or aren't provably accurate, because it furthers misunderstandings the larger the community grows.
Yeah, and I
agree with Adam.
Yeah, and a lot of it, I mean, and I'm not going to mention names, it's not necessary to do that, but there are whole YouTube influencers who build their brand around it. And they talk about it endlessly. They bring it up over and over again, and they will demonstrate how you apply. You apply X amount of times on your skin, X amount of times on your clothes. And I don't know if that's a good idea to really create a hobby out of that. It almost seems to be counterintuitive to the whole experience of fragrance. But, it's, as long as there's going to be a counter argument to that, hopefully we can prevent some people from thinking that it's a good idea. And I can't stress again, it's not even so much about other people. It is important because we should care about the welfare of other people around us. But what are the long-term effects of that? Doing that every day over and over again, So overindulgence can lead to desensitization. Yeah.
Especially if you're wearing the same thing over and over again. I mean,
right.
It's every once in a while you'll see somebody in this community talk about like the need to take like even a break and just go cold turkey from fragrances for a little while to come back to it with a refreshed nose, so to speak. And It's absolutely true. It's one reason I generally don't wear the same fragrance 2 days in a row. Like I tend to rotate stuff, is because if I wear stuff a lot, I tend to, it just kind of goes away from me. Like I said, I get unexpected things pretty easily. And I know that's the true for other people, because I've seen other people complain about fragrances that I know are pretty loud, and they say they get nothing from it. And I'm like, you have to. I guarantee other people have to be getting something from it, but you just have to be blind to it, because I know that fragrance. I've known other people who wore it. They didn't apply that much, and I was still getting plenty from it. So, yeah.
When was the last time you wore the same fragrance for one whole week?
Quite some time. It's funny. I don't think I probably have done that. Probably earlier on when I was first kind of getting a little bit more introductorily obsessed with the community.
When you had less than 20 bottles.
Yeah, well, you know what? That's the thing, though, Tammie, is that, even if I only had 2 bottles, I think, I have to sample so many things so often. And I have so many, if I showed you my sample drawer, you'd probably recoil in horror. It's so unorganized and packed with so many
No,
things.
it would please me because then I would know somebody it was worse than off than me.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. I mean, well, there you go. I'm happy to perform that service if you want me to. Uh, yeah, because I have so many things that I'm sampling and making introductory notes about all the time. It's rare that I would wear the same perfume, whether it's my bottle or a sample of something, for even twice in a week. So yeah, same issue on my end there.
Tammie, we have a quick question for you. Can you ask Tammie what her favorite men's fragrance is?
Yes, you can.
Mm-hmm.
I love vintage fragrances. So one of my favorite men's fragrances still today, and it's still very, very relevant. And Joseph may know this. And I love it on my husband. I'm gonna find it here. Just give me a second. And the people watching may be so surprised because it's nothing you've seen posted anywhere for a very long time.
Yeah, that's a goodie.
That.
Oh, you have that, the one with the yes.
Yes. Thank you. I love Giacomo de Giacomo.
Giacomo de Giacomo. Yeah. This is a man in a leather jacket, and back in the day, you used to have a guy come pick you up on a date. Like, that's how you did it. And he's coming to pick you up, and he's wearing this, and you guys are going to go out into a club, and he's going to take you to dinner, and he's wearing Giacomo. And you're going to have a good time. So this is my favorite fragrance on my husband. And I will often ask him to wear it to bed.
That is
so
choice.
I just
Giacomo.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
So I just want to speak to this comment here. I think that, like anything we consume, a modicum of personal responsibility and self-care is all that's really necessary. Have we lost our common senses? Well, truthfully, Jonathan, I think sometimes we can. I think if we get really caught up in something that we love and we're passionate about, we can lose sense of what's important. I think anybody who has an enthusiasm for something may overdo it without realizing it. When I was learning perfume making, I was smelling every material raw. And it wasn't until months later that I was told, no, don't do that. You need to dilute those materials. Mm-hmm. And what I mentioned on my video on Friday, when I had the discussion with my pulmonary specialist, and lest we forget, I've been diagnosed with asthma, okay? I'm not saying that perfume causes asthma. It is up for debate what the causes of asthma are, because there's still a lot of research that needs to be done. It's an immune response, though. So if you're predisposed to asthma, you can go through life without having anything bring it out of you. And I am of a firm belief that because I was a self-taught perfumer and I exposed myself to a lot of materials in a short period of time, that I triggered it because I wasn't using the best practice. Now, should I shame myself for that? Absolutely not. Because any of one of us can be in that situation where we try to do the best for ourselves and take personal responsibility. But as a community, I think it's important for us to share our experience and discuss these things just kind of as a reminder to everyone that, like, this is not to villainize. I mean, I'm not getting rid of my bottles. I'm not getting rid of fragrance. I love it. Still going to love it just as much. But it's to, just to really pay closer attention to how we are taking care of ourselves in this hobby. And it's just simple as that. So I get where you're coming from. But I think that we all have the potential to lose our senses. And that's why we have each other, to help each other out and help us come to our senses. So to thank you for that comment.
By the way, Brian, I'm smelling it now on my hand, and I'm going to ask my husband to wear it tonight. It's a vintage bottle. It's stunning. Absolutely stunning.
let's just take like a quick 1-minute detour on Giacomo de Giacomo. Vintage bottles of that are so cheap. You can pick them up so easily.
Yes.
That is kind of like in many ways a guilt-free purchase, given how cheaply you can generate.
It's super cheap. Yeah.
I promise. Safe blind buy.
Some may argue, though, that the older bottles are better. I don't know. I do have an older bottle, but even that was cheap. You know, like
I don't know what the modern version smells like, but I can tell you that this smells sexy as AF. That's what this smells like.
The modern one is very bone dry, is what I would say. And
really?
Yes. So the older one, it has a lot more greenness to it. And what has happened to it, the greenness has kind of gotten pulled out of it. So you actually end up with the modern fragrance is very interesting, but less nice in some ways, but interesting in its own way, because it's like, man, you get a fistful of dry cloves in that opening. Like somebody just took a handful of cloves and punched you in the face with it, which is kind of exciting in its own way. a different experience than the original Giacomo.
It sounds kind of like it would be similar to like Serge Lutens, Serge Noir. That's like a sock in the face of clove and pepper. Like that one's a tough one for me to get past. Like that opening, and I love Serge Lutens, but that one is like, that's like some strange like force field that just burns through your nostrils. Yeah. It's nuts. Alex says overspraying is a waste of money. I spray just the right amount for me to smell my fragrance for the day. Why should I waste my perfumes for other people to smell it? They can buy one if they want. It's a good way of looking at it.
Good point.
You don't have to be a walking advertisement.
The economics of overspraying. I mean that's not a ridiculous consideration, right? This hobby, especially if you've entered into the artisanal niche space for perfumes, what you're paying per milliliter of scent these days is a lot, right?
Yeah, totally.
So there's some personal incentive to not overspray unless you're the kind of person who doesn't mind burning through cash when you're buying that.
I always did think that there was some sort of like something mad about the community where you get all these people who just assume that all niche fragrance is awful because so much of it is overpriced, and to their point, a lot of it is. But yet they're so willing to say, well, we have 10 sprays of this, that'll do you well. You know what I mean? And I'm just thinking to myself, wait a second, if you really care about, cost per spray here, don't spray so much, no matter how much the bottle itself costs.
It's such a strange phenomenon in the past 15 years with the advent of social networks and social media, where we're so obsessed with and Derek, once again, I got to reference his Instagram live from last night, because he points out the results-driven attitude to fragrance. Like, what results come from it? What function does it serve? Will it get me attention? Will it get me compliments? And it's interesting. I think that probably 30 years ago, and people were thinking about that kind of in the periphery, but they wanted to just smell nice, and it was just like a part of their repertoire, for getting ready and being cleaned up. You put on your fragrance. It was much more simplified. But now it's turned into something that's almost like this obsessive thing where it's like, will it perform for you? Will it have the projection so that others will notice you? And it almost like sucks the whole spirit out of enjoying fragrance, because there's such a concern about these aspects of fragrance, and not actually how does it smell and how does it make you feel, And I think in the 21st century, with the advent of niche becoming a huge part of fragrance, we would have expected it to push more in that direction. But it seems to be that it's just become so commonplace in the discussion. I'm even seeing in the chat people talking about performance. Well, the reason why you have to overspray now is because things don't perform. And but what does it mean to perform? What are the expectations that we're putting on fragrance to do things for us? You know, I don't know. What do you guys think about that? I'll start with you, Adam, or Ryan, or whatever, whoever said that.
Adam can go. Adam can go.
I just wanted to point out that this is where that earlier figurative. Well, Jay, this is where you saying the analogy to treating fragrances like meals is really relevant, I think, because it's like there are some people who are food people. I would like to assume that everybody on this call to some extent is sort of a food person. I think it's really rare to meet somebody in the fragrance community who doesn't find some kind of nearly carnal pleasure in food. I would also just say that, you know, there are food people, and then there are the people who eat food as sort of a pragmatic part of their life where, yeah, they like certain things more than others. And when they are presented with something that's particularly well cooked, they'll enjoy that, but they don't seek out food as almost like a hobby like food people do. So, you know, the same thing can be true of perfume, right? Where we, you know, there are several types of people with to varying degrees of specificity who want certain things out of their perfumes. And I'm not necessarily saying this to judge them, but to me, I can't imagine a world where I'm not a food person. And I also can't imagine a world where I treat, you know, fragrances like a non-food person would, right?
No, I get where you're going with that. Absolutely. It also speaks to what a rare breed of human being that we are to even have the kind of attention that we have to fragrance, because most of the world, it ranges from anything from indifferent to disliking fragrance to being sort of like, oh, that smells nice. That doesn't smell that nice. And there's not really much more to it. And there are going to be people who may have 3 or 4 fragrances on their dresser at most. Most only have 1, maybe 2. And then we have people like us who can have anywhere between, I don't know, 30 to 700
To
something.
an unknowable number.
An unfathomable number. So we're the ones who are experiencing it more and more frequently and many different kinds and throwing it all ourselves. And I think that my conversation that I had with Dimi, we were bringing this up, like, we are anomalies in society. Mm-hmm. We're taking all of this stuff in. We're like we're sort of like these guinea pigs in a way. I don't know. I guess that there was a time in the past where people would consume a lot of fragrance and collect a lot of fragrance. But with this age of the internet, the access to information and how that motivates enthusiasm and the hunt and the collecting, we're probably, you know, for those in this niche sector, are probably consuming a lot more in shorter periods of time than anybody in the past. So that's something to be food for thought as well.
To that point, we should probably mention that it is a tremendous privilege to own a single bottle of perfume, never mind multiple. And to some extent, it is a tremendous privilege to own a little bit of a sample of one. And just like it's a privilege to be a food person, as I was saying earlier, you know, like I'm definitely one, and I know that I'm, you know, moderately like well off enough to afford the ingredients I want to use in any given night of cooking. So, you know, that's something that we should all not take for granted too, right? And when
Absolutely.
You think of it that way, it almost becomes, well, you know, this fragrance might not last from breakfast until, you know, evening slumber, but it does the trick, right? It gives me something I appreciate, and isn't that the point?
Right. I really appreciate that you brought up privilege, and I know that that's a tough subject for people. They don't want to talk about privilege.
Well, no, they don't want to talk about it because it's a liberal talking point. But
yeah,
I think I'm just using it as a general term, right? I'm not.
It is. It doesn't need to be a right. Exactly. It's not necessarily a political thing. It's the fact that, you know, there are some of us who can afford to spend our disposable income on these things, whether or not we're doing it responsibly or irresponsibly. And that there are other people out there who perhaps wish like, oh, I wish I could do that. I wish I could buy 5 Chanel Les Exclusives or what have you. That their relationship with fragrance is going to be inherently different. And that's something to keep in mind. I think it's good that you brought that up. And also it makes for a great segue, which I think, Philip, now we're talking about healthy relationships with fragrance. Will buying addiction make an appearance on tonight's discussion? Why not? Because I'd have a lot to talk about. I'd have a lot to talk about that as well, because I live with that too. You know, I'm a collector.
You need an intervention.
Oh, I already have one, my dear. I already have.
Along with you guys.
Oh, those two are probably a lot more.
I mean, I keep I don't have as many bottles as you do, but I don't think my relationship to my purchasing cadence is the most healthy that it could be. It's very impulsive. It is very much my go-to. I've had a down day. Let me get on the internet and search for something to buy to make myself feel better. I don't think that is the best crutch to be leaning on in those circumstances. Not to say that you shouldn't do something to make yourself feel better. I mean, but it's the difference between saying like you had a bad day, have a pint of ice cream, and then, oh, you have a bad day once a week, have a pint of ice cream once a week. It's a different
so
thing.
Perfume is your therapist.
But it's not a great therapist. A real therapist is a good therapist.
I'm not one to judge, because there's a lot of therapy right here for me.
No, I think that's true. I think that's a fair thing, right? I've leaned on that. Just life distraction with COVID, my collection exploded from what it was. It's probably doubled in size since COVID hit, and I think that's no mistake. I've been was a lot more isolated, was a lot more interested in pulling in experiences when we weren't allowed to go out and do as much. And then I think I kept to that trend, and I haven't completely kicked it. I'm doing a little bit better at the moment, but I think that's something we all need to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Because I look at some folks, and anyone in this hobby can do this, but like if you look at somebody and they're showing you like a veritable wall of fragrances, I do this in my mind. Sometimes you can start to add up the dollars that is there in value on that wall. And it is a tremendous amount. It is a tremendous amount. It is a life choice level of investment that some of us have made. And I think that's folks who are making it one bottle at a time can lose sight of the scale of that investment. And I think that's something that we all need to be thinking through, and I need to keep myself in check in. Like I said, I think, I buy too much perfume. But
I had to toss back the rest of my wine for that one because no, I am out of the closet, not only as an asthmatic, but as somebody who deals with shopping addiction. I am the person who's actually freely admitting to it. There are people who they're in different stages in their journey of figuring out why they choose to buy and how frequently they buy and how much credit that they rack up, credit debt they rack up, and so on and so forth. But I mean, like, come on, I overspend on fragrance, and a lot of us here do. And I'm not going to try to get people to like come out of the closet like me, but I think having a healthy relationship with that is important, and identifying when it could be a problem. How much time is it taking up in your life? If you're finding that you're spending more time on anticipation and preoccupation, which are two big components of addiction, like when you're like constantly looking for, the next fix, because it can be kind of like a drug. It's like, I need that next fragrance and I need to have the physical possession of it because it will give me that rush, that thrill, that dopamine release. So asking yourself, am I doing this too often? And am I getting, my needs met in other ways? Like, am I really just taking a look at like what your finances are and how much time and energy that you're spending on it?
So something I thought about doing, Joseph, and this just occurred to me because I also watch like fitness challenges, and then my daughters are telling me, "Oh, I'm doing this 90-day challenge, Mom." And I thought, you know what? I should do a fragrance challenge, like a 30-day. I mean, 90 days would be nobody would do this, but for 30 days, no buy, and only use the fragrances that you've have in your shelf, and you can't buy it and can't sample, and I'm like, how many people could do that? So it's just a thought, but it vanished because I'm like, I don't even think I can do that.
I totally get where you're coming from. When you're consuming a lot of stuff at once, how are you even processing it? Like, how much of a backlog I have, how many fragrances that I own that I haven't even gotten around to like wearing once. Like I'm
looking at the table right now that it has the things that I need to sniff, and I haven't even put my nose on them yet.
Out of my collection, there are still like a good 300 that I haven't even reviewed. 300! Most people don't even have a fraction of that, and I haven't even reviewed them yet. So when you realize these things, it's like it prompts a need for pause,
But
and that's where I
don't feel guilty about it. And I'll say this is because my obsession has been going on since 2000, the year 2000. So I have collected them. It's taken me some time, but like Ryan, COVID actually made me go. My curio wasn't a curio; it was something else on a counter, and I would go there often, and just to get some sense of relief from the chaos that's going on in the world, I'd smell my perfumes, and they brought me a lot of peace and tranquility and serenity, and I just enjoyed them. And then I realized I missed fragrances that I hadn't smelled in a long time because I wasn't really caring. And then I would go look, and that's when I found people doing reviews on YouTube, and I found similar people like me, and I'm like, oh my God, other people, weirdos exist. Wow. Okay. And then I would look specifically for reviews of perfumes I had, and I'm like, nobody even talks about because a lot of them are old. And that's how I started finding out, oh, there's that perfume, and that was it. And then I went down the rabbit hole like Alice, and yeah.
The rabbit hole. Oh, yes. So to kind of give you a background with me, like I've been a fragrance enthusiast for, for years, like 15 years. I mean, I was wearing fragrance before that, but I had like a little modest collection of like 3 or 4. And then like 15 years ago, I walked into a Barney's and I was done. I was like, that's when I learned of Serge Lutens, and I learned of Frederic Malle, and around that time, Nasomato was coming out 14 years ago. And, but it never reached a fever pitch the way that it did in 2020. Like in 2020, I just went off the rails. Like my collection went from like a modest size, like I thought a modest size for like a fragrance nut, to like, it just blew out of proportion. So I think a lot of us were really dealing with like the uncertainty of life with this like pandemic, but yeah, it's funny that a lot of us can relate to that at that time, we really sought after these things in that time of uncertainty. So yeah. It's a lot of things to consider with this. And for those out there who are concerned because I came out as, dealing with shopping addiction, remember, I'm talking about shopping addiction. Like you have to ask yourself, like, if, is it really worth it for you to spend money that you could be saving? Look at it. Do you have, don't do what I did. Do you have a savings? If you do, okay. If you don't, think about what you're doing. Seriously.
Yeah.
Sorry to be grim about it, but
no, that's a legit thing to talk about.
If you don't have a savings, if you're cutting into savings, if you're cutting into things like 401k, if you're, not that I did all of this, but people have, and
there's a Gambler Anonymous hotline you need to be calling.
It's like gambling. There's very closely related.
Yeah.
If you've racked up credit card debt and you maxed out your credit and now you're cutting into other expenses, think about these things.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you are gainfully employed and you have a lot of money to throw around, think of the experiences that you're denying yourself because you're putting too much money into the habit. And note that I say the word habit because that's what it can become. So
I do think, the pandemic affected that sort of, urge to spend. I mean, I can definitely remember what it was like during the pandemic on our end and just thinking like, yeah, what was I in the mood for? What was I doing at the time? And I am glad that I was muted a few minutes ago when Ryan had said that perfume is it good therapy. I cackled maniacally when you said that, Ryan. It should not stand in for that. And Lord knows we all needed more of it during the pandemic. And I just remember thinking like, yeah, the world's kind of crumbling a little bit. And so I don't feel too bad if I get this bottle that I've been wanting for a long time. You know what I mean? Like I didn't feel too bad about it then. And now this year I've gotten married and we've bought a house and we went on a honeymoon. And now I'm just like, no, I am good on everything. The world is at least somewhat stable and I want it to remain that way, and I want my personal finances to remain that way. I don't think about buying anything right now. So I will say, the atmosphere of the world and what's going on and how much stress you're facing at any particular point in time, they obviously are going to have some kind of impact on your spending habits, whether you're quote unquote addicted to it or not. Really, I think it encourages certain behavior types when factors like that are so overbearing.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a point I want to call this out because COVID is like there was a period of time where, as I guess, depending on where you were in the States, where like you weren't going out to get dinner on the weekends with friends. Like you weren't going out to dinner. You weren't getting
socializing
drinks.
at all.
You weren't socializing. You were stuck in your house. And that was the point where it was like, okay, well, this is kind of like a nice reprieve. I have something to look forward to this week. I can't go out this weekend and do anything.
Right.
And so you see how that kind of like falls in and like that's not bad in isolation, but then you're like, okay, well, when it becomes like a habit is then, to use the word Joseph used, a habit is like when it becomes like kind of a concern and then a crutch that you lean on. So
and the important thing is when having this discussion too is you're going to have people who resist this. And that has everything to do with where they are and you're not responsible for it. Like there are going to be some people who say like, no, I don't agree with this. Like I'm fine, but that's fine. You just kind of let go and let them decide for themselves. We can't assume whether or not somebody has an issue with it unless they reach out and say like, I have a problem. And here I am. I mentioned that I've had a problem and I've worked on it. And, and like you said, Tammie, like there should be no guilt or shame because that doesn't help us to move forward and to assess the situation in a way that's compassionate to ourselves. Some people are just
all learn from each other.
Right.
I do a thing where it's a lather and layer, and I demonstrate how I take a unscented lotion and spray my perfume in there. That way I can put it on in this way, right? And now learning about perfumes more and your situation, you're probably going to make me realize that might not be a good idea. I might rethink how I do things. And so it's all good. We all learn. And like you said, you don't have to be ashamed of it when you don't know something. It's, you're not irresponsible because you don't know.
Right. And if you're confident that it's not an issue, then hooray for you, because only you can answer that question for yourself. Some of us we're realizing that we might have an issue. I don't speak for anyone else but myself, but I know in this community some of us deal with what I've dealt with, and that's why I want to speak out about it. You know, kicks and scents, fragrance addiction and alcohol addiction have very similar building blocks. And as someone who has dealt with alcohol addiction, I have to watch myself very carefully. Really, the only difference is the physical effects of it. It's the same pattern. It's that cycle.
Well, Kicks and Scents, if you follow her on Instagram, she also has an addiction to shoes, which amazing. She has an amazing collection of shoes. So I follow her to look at her shoes. She matches shoes with fragrance. It's pretty clever.
Yeah.
I would say here, I think one thing that can get lost in this kind of conversation where we talk about the dark side is like there's something beautiful here, right? We all respond to something beautiful. We're all loving something here, but like anything in any relationship, like you can develop like there's like the codependent version of that relationship, and then there's like the healthy attachment version of that relationship, right? And you personally, for myself, I kind of am able to sense the difference, even if I'm not being honest with myself in the moment of it. Like I tend to know when I'm responding to this hobby out of genuine love and enthusiasm for the beauty of it, and when I'm leaning into it in ways that are a little bit less healthy for me. And it's often pretty clear to me which way it is at any given time. I just have to be honest with myself about it. And I think for me, there's something beautiful here, and that's worth celebrating. But because it's beautiful, it's also, in some ways, I should be giving it the respect it deserves, I think.
Yes. And to look at it that way, it really shifts the whole view that these are things that you know, these sensory delights that we can take in with our senses, that with our, you know, whether it's food or fragrance or music, that there's nothing inherently wrong with any of that. It's just it's important sometimes to have these conversations, you know, and I'm glad that we're having them. Anuj mentions here, I'm starting to see lots of enthusiasts and collectors who are now culling their collections, quality over quantity. Lighten the load, you know, take inventory of what you have. That's what I've been doing lately. Like, do I really want to carry this weight with me? You know, you can't take it with you, as the old adage says, you know.
Yeah.
I'm definitely in the process of doing that.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Adam. But I one thing that just popped in my head that I think I've thought about this at different points, like with the news and things like that, about like the way internet transforms our human engagement with the world. Like we live at a point in human history where one person has more access to shopping like opportunities at the press of a button than any person has ever had in the history of the human species, which is like kind of a crazy thing when you really like take a step back and think about it. So like there's something also to just be said that like have grace with yourself for the fact that like this is actually a very unique moment for the humankind in the sense that like the inundation of news, the inundation of information, the inundation of like shopping opportunities, like things that we have at our fingertips that were never had at anybody's fingertips in the history, human history, is both like a blessing and a curse. Yeah. We're not entirely, I don't know that the human constitution is like meant to have something as powerful as even just like eBay at your fingertips at a moment's, like within 2 minutes, I can get onto eBay and have purchased something without a thought. Like eBay makes it that easy for me. I don't have to consider it. I don't have to haggle with someone about it. I don't have to do like any of the work that ordinarily would have gone into some sort of like process to obtain something in the past of this species. So like that kind of thing, I think about this a lot when I get over intellectualize this stuff, but I do think sometimes that's another thing to just think about. I think this is a very unique problem. Even growing up And I'm on that generation where I remember what it was like to grow up a little bit before a cell phone and after a cell phone. So I still have a little bit of that memory. I'm one of the younger folks on this call, but I still can remember that. There's generations of people who don't have that memory, but like this is a new thing. And I think we sometimes forget what that does to us in its own way too. So that's another puzzle.
Some more words from Kixon. Since Anthony Bourdain said that he didn't really like wine until he had so much of that, he finally figured out what he really, really likes. And he says, I think, or she, I didn't, is it, so Tammie, Kixon says, I don't want to use the wrong pronouns. Are you he or she? Is Kixon sense a female? I don't want to, what do you call it?
If it's the same one I follow on Instagram.
I think it is. And please forgive me if I've been misgendering or not using the wrong pronouns. I think fragrance is similar. Once you have had enough and can figure out what you really want, you can focus on those special things. If you can come to terms with it that way, and then it's beautiful. And that maybe is where the culling process comes in, where you've just drank it all in with a fury, and then you realize, wow, I think I know what really resonates with me, and you can either do with that just sampling, or you can do that by buying full bottles and realizing you never needed the full bottles to begin with. Which is, yeah, exactly what I'm going. We are overstimulated, Margie. There is an overstimulation, and consumption in the 21st century is unlike anything that preceded it for humans. Everything down to music.
People now have ADD. I think everybody has ADD, and everybody gets diagnosed with that, right? You're overstimulated, and you are distracted easily, and you have attention deficit. Everyone does. I think it's just the way we live. I don't own we don't have a TV at home, but people have to call me and tell me what traffic's like or the weather's going to be. And that was one of the reasons why I went to YouTube, to look for something to watch that wasn't about anything that wasn't in my house or on my street. Like, I really stay away from news altogether. And perfumes, getting reviews of perfumes I owned was the start of it. But back to what you guys are saying, it's I think the addictions are beautiful and should be respected when they're done in a way that they're cherished. Like, we cherish our fragrances. Like, I see you guys post and I see how you guys talk about your perfumes, and it's never in a bad, negative way. You guys speak very highly of them, and you tell the romantic stories about perfumes. And so those addictions are kind of like they're like love stories.
Everything has a silver lining. Everything has a silver lining. Even something that may come out of an addiction that you can eventually, with help and with healing, there can be a silver lining that can come out of it. I mean, a lot of artists have had addictive personalities, a lot of creative people. And, over time, some of those people have been able to get themselves into a healthier position. And even within that turmoil, some beautiful things have come out of it. That's why we can't really look at it, in a very black and white thing. Like, I was in a bad way, and everything that happened throughout that time was a product of that. So I think that it is, in a way, a good way to point out, like, good things can come out of unhealthy situations. But the bottom line is that we want to move ourselves into a healthier situation for self-preservation. Alex has reminded me that I need to revisit my first impressions a little bit later than usual. Usually do that at about 8:20. Radical Rose.
I've tried Radical Rose.
Very syrupy in the dry down. It's like a very syrupy, sweet dry down, but with the patchouli underneath it.
Do you think you could just revisit what the Scents of the Night were, just in terms of their titles? Because I was scarfing my while you were introducing them.
Well, so I'm going to have to run, guys, because I have to go finish preparing dinner, because I was in the middle of doing that and came to have this talk. So
that's fine. I wish that you could have stayed, because we're going to end up now. We're going to be freed from the shackles of serious discussion. We were going to be able to just talk about fragrance. I was hoping I could have you backstage after the stream. How sad.
Give me 1 second. I'm going to come off, and then I'll come right back on.
Okay. Yeah. Take as much time as you need. We'll be here. So the ones, Alex, that I did tonight, this is Métier Première Radical Rose, and I did Ragnagé Envelope, and 8 and Bob Provence. So Radical Rose is like a syrupy vanillic rose with the patchouli underpinning to it. And it's just sort of like a take it or leave it. I think it's like in third place so far. It's competently done. It's nice. It smells inoffensive. I love rose. I already love a lot of different types of roses, and this is not really one where I feel resonates with me enough to say it doesn't really stand out in a way that tells me like this is one that I need to, get to my computer and write a review on it and tell everybody how great it is. And also, I don't know. Have you guys heard much about Métier Première as a house?
So yeah, hold on one second. Right here.
Do you have one? Oh, okay.
I just got this in a swap, so I have had no experience with the house really until I got this in a swap this past week, which is the felt and leather. Which, Joseph, I don't think you would like this at all. But
oh, really? Tell me about it.
I like it. I just don't know that Falcon leather is very much a modern leather in the sense of you've seen these in the modern leathers in the designer segment and the niche segment. It's not exactly Tom Fordy, but it is kind of Tom Fordy. It's not the same Tuscan leather accord. It's more of a softer leather than that. It reminds me a little bit of the Bottega Veneta leather accord they use, but it's nice, but it's like there's this kind of issue with some niche where I feel like I could get a designer version of this, and this isn't really like $100 more than what the designer version of this is.
That's exactly how I feel about this. I feel like this would be a well done sort of like, the designer exclusive line rose. Like it's not. It kind of reminds me of a lot of like the niche houses that I affectionately call VC niche, venture capitalist niche, where it's like, let's tap into this niche market, and we know that that's like the in thing right now for people who are into fragrance. But let's make it make it accessible and mainstream enough so that we can expand, to widen our profit margin as much as possible, get some units selling, the whole story. I think that this is one of those houses, and I'm not saying they're bad, they're fine, but what they're doing is they're advertising a certain product with a price tag that you could find elsewhere, without having to spend the same kind of money. It kind of reminds me of a little bit of like Parfums de Marly. Oh, sorry.
Right. And I mean, I swapped for this, so I didn't pay retail for it. I wouldn't have, like, if I had sampled this first, I guess my review is essentially like, I would not have paid retail for this if I had sampled it.
Yeah.
I swapped for it.
Right.
I would say it's also hindered, and it sounds like the Rose one is the same way. It's just so minimalist in its structure that it's a simple accord that it has constructed. And there's not really much more to it. And that's, in some ways that's the legacy of Tom Ford, but I feel like Tom Ford at least like did that a little bit like more richly at least to start than a lot of does. Like Tuscan leather may not be your favorite fragrance, but it's hard to say that like that wasn't something that people put time into and really had built that out.
Right.
This is not on the level of like a Tuscan leather in terms of complexity. So
super quick, Duncan, that was actually a steal to get a Scada Pour Homme for $145, considering how much in demand that fragrance is right now. Like it's going for like at least $300 for like 100 ml. So
yeah, I haven't been able to find it for that price. That's
oh my god, no! I gave up on it a long time ago. couldn't find a decent price bottle. Adam, what are your thoughts on this new generation of niche houses that are coming in? What's your hot take on it? I'm putting you on the spot to give a hot take.
Well, I guess I can generate a hot take. Just from a purely aesthetic point of view, it almost feels as though they all like just took Byredo's card and ran with it as quickly as they possibly could.
Yes.
Not just in terms of what the scents smell like, but also just in terms of the packaging and like the branding and like this. It's cool not to try very hard with the label, but of course that's also sort of an anachronism. Like I shouldn't say it like that because honestly, Byredo tried very hard. They created a very singular looking brand that has been repeated and repeated and repeated for a reason. They thought about user experience. They made like those magnetic caps and everything, and they made like a round bottle, which also bucked a trend of the time. So maybe it's not that they didn't try hard, but I do feel like the wave of like this similar niche space takes a lot from the Byredos and maybe even the Dias and Durgas of the world a little bit. Now, all that being said, I'm not terribly familiar with Matière Première. However, I will say that my friend Nicola Thomas, who also does some stuff for Fragrantica, and also just to give her own little shout out, is that she's at the Sniff podcast. So Nicola really liked Encens Suave, I believe, and French Flower. Now, what's interesting to me about this brand is specifically about French Flower, which I believe is a tuberose scent, is that the perfumer and founder of the house grows some of, I believe it's the tuberose, if not other flowers. Maybe it's orange blossom. I'm not sure. I apologize. It's one of the two, if not both, on his own property in France. Now, that sounds like one of those claims, like the Creed-esque claims where, they're starting to really romanticize something that might not be that way in reality. But actually, this one is true, everyone. This one is quite true. There have been people who have actually gone to his property and checked out his lab, and you can literally see in a photo his lab where he's blending all the perfumes, and then there's a window where you can see the garden. So it's actually legit. And that doesn't say anything about how good the fragrance is going to smell. You could grow all the tuberose you want and still be awful at perfuming. But I think it's really neat that some of what he grows in his own garden ends up in the bottle. Again, that's sort of apropos of nothing, but I think it's pretty interesting.
I think that's very interesting, and I think that's also it's also a good point, which is to say about these houses. There's always this tendency to kind of say a brand is either good or bad, just kind of categorically, and it may be the case out of 40 cents, I only like 2, but maybe I really like those 2 if I ever got my nose on them. I think I don't know. I mean, it's that way with Parfums de Marly for me. I don't love a lot of Parfums de Marly, but I've tried some Parfums de Marly that I did enjoy. And it's just, so I wouldn't, I don't know. I haven't tried this full line. I've only tried Falcon Leather. Joe's only tried the Rose perfume. That doesn't mean I wouldn't like some of the other things in the line.
Right. A lot of what I learn is just from conjecture. I'll ask what do you know about this house? What can you tell me about this house? And of course, you're going to have people with so many different opinions and theories as to how the house operates and whether or not they're giving free bottles to influencers and how that affects the integrity of the brand and whether the fragrances are good at all to begin with. But, you really ultimately can only make a decision by smelling a few things. And, even a house like Montal, people assume that I don't like anything from Montal, but I like a couple of things from Montal. I've smelled a couple of things from, Bond Number 9 that I thought were good, and those are the ones that I think kind of become de rigueur punching bags for, niche snobs, oh, that's not real niche. That's not real, haute perfumery. We went on a huge tangent, and I'm sure people want to hear my thoughts on the other 2 here. So the second one, Rania J, Ambre Loup. I like the dry down a lot. I said to myself, if I ever decided to add another amber to my collection, which I won't, promising myself that, I originally said that I would do Ambre Luce from Parfum de Pierre, but I think it would actually be this instead from just so far with my experience with it. It's just really well done. It's like earlier on, I was mentioning this extraction called Amber Sweetie. I don't recall who produces this type of fractional distillation of labdanum, but I'm picking it up here, and I've never experienced it being used at this extent as it is here, and I really like it. I think this might be in the running for the winner tonight. And then the third one is 8 and Bob Provence, which had this great citric bergamot opening. And now there's like citric aldehydes and like very long lasting substantive citric molecules in this, which can go either way. They can be a little nagging after a while. It's like, it doesn't, it feels like, oh, this is trying to smell like true citrus, but your primitive brain is like telling yourself like that can't be possible for the citrus to last that long. There's like this cognitive dissonance that takes place in the brain where it's like, how can this still smell like an orange rind? And I'm kind of experiencing that with this. Like, how is that possible? It smells kind of like mandarin aldehyde, which is one of those where it like lasts a long time on the skin. But I'm not sure how keen I am about that. Do you guys know anything? Well, I don't know if Ryan, you didn't mention anything earlier, but Adam, do you know anything about Provence by 8 and Bob?
Can't say I do. I think I know a little bit more about Ambre Loup, but even that's limited. Ambre Loup, it's been some time since I've last tried it, but I remember the labdanum being very preeminent, if you will, in the composition. And
I kind of love that about it.
Have you both tried other Rania J scents? Because I like Rania J, so I'm curious if you two have feelings.
Never. That was my first one. I knew about the house for ages, but I never got samples. That's the only one. I know they have a lavender one too, off the top of my head. That's supposed to be pretty good.
Is the lavender any good, Ryan? I am a sucker for lavender, so I'd be willing to try it either way.
I have not tried it, but I would be curious. I haven't tried the lavender. I have tried Oud Assam, which is a very animalic oud with real oud. So that's a very polarizing one for folks. If you don't like the barnyardy facets of oud, that's not for you. And then the oud carries over into her fragrance, Tea Habanero, which is her tobacco fragrance, which is lovely. It's a lovely, like, creamy oud and tobacco experience that, again, has some of that animalic stuff going on. So if that's not your cup of tea, that's not for you. But if you don't mind that, it's kind of an interesting, dark, creamy tobacco oud concoction that is made to a very high quality standard that I think is admirable.
I think so far Ambre Loup is in the lead. I think it is. Provence, I don't know. It's pretty linear. Like, it started off like bergamot and citrus heavy, and now, I don't know, like an hour and a half or more in, there's these citrus aldehydes, and they don't bother me so much. It's just there isn't really much interest to that after a while. It's like I kind of hoped for there to be more development to kind of figure out where the Provence comes in. Like, was I going to experience some lavender or, some other floral materials of some type? But it's just orange peels, mandarin peels.
I'm trying to think of the other 8 and Bob scents I've tried. I know I've sampled the 8 and Bob original, and I've sampled Nuit de Megève, or Megève, however you say that, Megève. Nuit de Megève I liked a lot, but it was like the opening was very exciting and it had this like nice spicy opening with like a kind of like wormwood, anise, licorice vibe, and then it just dried down to the most thin, basic vetiver dry down you could do. So you had this opening, and then it was just persistent vetiver on skin, and very narrow, not like a particularly rooty vetiver, but a very like clean, narrowly pitched vetiver. And I felt the original, I can't remember as well about it, but it's supposed to be kind of like a citrus ambergris, but like a molecularly constructed ambergris. And I found that leaned a little bit too far in the traditional like aquatic aroma chemicals to create that effect, and that was the dominant dry down for that too. So it's three fragrances is a trend, better openings than dry downs. I don't know.
Molecular constructed ambergris reminds me of Dimmy. We had such a great conversation on ambergris last week. Bangkok Hound says that lavande, how would you say 44 if we're sticking to French, would be 44, I think, is an excellent barbershoppy lavender. Sounds nice, but I think Bangkok Hound knows that I have a lot of barbershoppy lavenders, so it would have to be an awfully unique one. But Helmut Lang Eau de Cologne, oh my god, so good. Do you know that Helmut Lang Eau de Cologne was my signature scent when I was 22 years old? Like, I bought it just because like I aesthetically thought that the bottle looked cool, and I smelled it. And I'm like, this will do. Yeah, this smells nice. And I still have some of that original bottle, and then I bought like another bottle when it was re-released. Yeah, that's a really good one. Good stuff. And Champ de Provence is very linear. Am I actually not reading the full name? Is it actually Champ de Provence? Am I not seeing the Champ on top of it? Oh, it is. It's in tiny text. My 40-something-year-old eyes cannot see that tiny text that says Champ de Provence. Yes, it is it's a linear citrus for sure. T. Habanero is a real tobacco oud. Is that... So that's the one you were talking about, right? Yeah,
that's the one I was talking about. Yeah, and it's not. I recently commented about Tom Ford Tobacco Oud on Instagram. Talked about it in my tobacco fragrance video recently too. I like the Tom Ford Tobacco Oud. I think that is a very interesting fragrance on its own right, but there is no oud in it whatsoever. T. Habanero has a very immediate detectable oud, so calling it the real tobacco oud is appropriate.
Philip is very helpful in my rusty pronunciation of French since my 4 years of French in high school. Champ de Provence. Is that one good? Please assure me that Champ de Provence. I wonder if Tammie will make it back. We're at 8:52 now, usually running until about 9:20, 9:30 at the latest. So we'll shift the topic since I revisited all of the first impressions. What are some fragrances, Adam? Because I haven't checked in with you in a while. We missed you last week. Are there a couple of fragrances right now that have tickled your fancy lately you'd like to share with us?
Yes. So I have this horrible affliction where, whether it's ADD, I'm not sure, where like when I'm put on the spot to talk about things, my brain just stops. It's like, hey, these things that you think about constantly, that you write about often, that you manufacture thoughts of daily, guess what? You're not going to remember the names of any of them. No, I do have one thing that I can probably just immediately call to mind, and that would be Gorsland from the Scottish house of Joram Studio. Gorsland is, it's marvelous. I kind of think of it as like a really agrestic chypre. And I say chypre loosely because technically there's no like oak moss note listed, but there are like dank aspects to the perfume, and there are some like greener dank like almost moss-like effects in the fragrance. So I don't mind playing a little bit fast and loose with these boundaries that we are imposed upon us. I think Gorsland is really beautiful. It is this, like I said, it's intensely agrestic, and what I mean by that, it has a lot of texture, right? It's very kind of fuzzy, but not in the same way that. Well, my all-time nemesis, Versace Eros is fuzzy. I cannot stand Eros, but it does have a very fuzzy quality to it. In a negative way for me, Gorsland is different. Gorsland is like a softer fuzz, if you will. Like if you're like a Photoshop person, if you like imagine turning the blur like down versus turning it way up, it's like that scratchy texture that is in some fragrances without being the scratchiness that comes from mall scents, if you know what I mean. So Gorsland is a really wonderful thing. It's unlike anything I've really smelled insofar as that it is able to embrace all of this, highly textured quality without being overwhelming. And it has certainly like a smoky quality to it. The smoky quality to it, though, is really interesting because it's an oily smoke. And I don't mean like diesel oil. I mean texture oil, like olive oil. It has like the resinous qualities of smoke without being like that overwhelming cloud of smoke, campfire smoke. It's not like that at all. It's smooth, refined, treated, if you will. And the notes are not as important as much as I think the texture is. It's got like this big, bold character to it that's still somehow refined. For those interested, though, it does have some quirky notes involved. There is, of course, gorse, the like kind of shrub-like plant that grows across different parts of Europe. Black elder. There's a cannabis note. I will say that's probably where the moss comes in. The cannabis note is sort of where I get the mossy sensation that I think categorizes this into Chypre territory, because the cannabis note itself is less like you're near somebody smoking at a concert, that kind of dank patchouli-like quality, and more like, if I'm being direct here, it's more like, smelling buds out of a bag, or maybe even more so, it's more like smelling half-smoked buds out of somebody's pipe, right? It's not quite so dirty because the fire, the literal lighting of it itself has sort of burned away those like animalic qualities that you would associate with like these dirty materials or these dirty things. And all that's left is like a refined smoke that's been sitting for a while. And it's really brilliant in that regard. I can't say enough about it. It's a really fun fragrance. It's not for everybody. It's very charismatic, for lack of a better term. But I definitely want to give a huge shout out to it because it's been fascinating me. I can't stop thinking about it.
Well, I'd love to sample a cannabis, a fragrance that features a cannabis note with your recommendation. Last week, I had, for my first impressions, a supposed cannabis fragrance that smelled of guava and passion fruit on my skin. And that's all. Guava and passion fruit, like juice on my skin. I don't know if I still have the like, I want to remember what it was, but it was so bizarre. I didn't enjoy it. I wasn't repulsed by it, but it was not a very nice fragrance. You might have to, I don't know if I put it away. I probably put it in with all the others that I like, get rid of this shit. But it was so strange that my nose perceived it that way. I don't know if that's going to happen again with another fragrance that features a cannabis note or what. I mean, actual pot weed does not smell like that to me. It was really strange.
I guess if you don't mind, I do have one other, now that I am like, my brain is working and like processing things and remembering names of things that I actually really like. I am Italian, so I'm going to cringe at my own attempt at pronouncing this in the Italian way. Spezzi, right? Spezzi from Lorenzo Villoresi. I feel this is a criminally underrated one from the line. I only recently discovered it. I've been having like a back and forth like conversation with the brand a lot because I'm using their patchouli and a roundup of patchouli scents that I'm working on. But in the meantime, I've also come across Spezi, and I adore it. It's so
Yes.
It's another kind of textural perfume, I would
Yeah,
say.
it totally.
It has that airy quality, and
Yeah.
it's fascinating when I discover this because it almost I don't want to paint it in a negative light, but it almost reminds me of those deodorants that were very popular in the late 90s that like aerosolized, and they all had a very similar smell. I'm not talking about Axe. I mean like the very clean, almost a little bit spicy without fully embracing anything spice types of deodorants, and more so than the scent of those deodorants is what you'd smell is like the projectorant or whatever
Right.
kind of throws the thing out.
Right.
And I just remember it being like a starchy cloud in the bathroom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it has a quality that reminds me of that without being as overwhelming or noxious.
Right. Philip, Champ de Provence. Is that it? Champ de Provence. I also wanted to point out that I want to sample Parfum d'Empire Asiade because I love that kind. Have you guys tried that one, Asiade?
I haven't tried anything from Parfum d'Empire.
Get cracking, motherfucker! All right, hold on a second.
Wow,
I want to grab my bottle of Spezi. Hold on a second.
While he's reaching for that, yeah, Ryan, I think they're right up your street, from what I understand of your taste. No brainer for you. I mean, you're probably not going to like all of them. Very few people who have tried them do, but
what did I just miss? I didn't hear anything.
Adam's just convincing me to sample Parfum d'Empire, and I know I will. I know I would enjoy it, but I there's just so much to test. It's just I'm getting there.
Hey, for those, those snobs, like I have an older bottle of Spezi, before they changed the cap. They take a look. Yes. Oh my God.
Cal's. So we're talking right now, I think, about Lorenzo Villaresi, but I don't know which one you're referring to. I think you're talking about the Italian one, so that's Lorenzo Villaresi. But just in case you were wondering, the other one I had mentioned was Joram Studio, but they're from Scotland.
I'll put in Lorenzo Villaresi Spezi. That's
Alex. For whatever reason, I can't comment in the
oh, really?
I don't know why.
So if you're in the studio, you should see two tabs to the right, and the one of the tabs should allow you to type in. Can you see that on the right? There's one that's just a chat for us to see privately.
The public comment section. I'm reading the comments. There's no field for me to lay a comment in. Surprisingly.
Oh, that's so weird.
You're the only one who can chat using that interface.
Are you serious?
Yeah. If I chat, I'm doing it on my phone. I have the live stream pulled up on the YouTube app.
I thought that you guys could do it from in here as well. So a pro tip then is if you can't do it in here, what I would do for months when on other people's live streams is I would just keep a pop-out window out, and then that way I can just type in a response that way. But I just thought that everybody could do that. Like there would be like comments, and then you can post a comment, and then there's another tab for private chat. Well, that is a shame. But yes, Lorenzo. I'm sharing my own comment. Lorenzo Villaresi Spezi. Adam, Ryan and I are very big fans of Lorenzo Villaresi. I don't know if you already knew that, but
I did know that, and I'm coming into the light. I'm ascending right into the light of Lorenzo. Yeah, I really want to meet him. I really want to like go to his. He probably has like some sort of Italian villa and like just chat with him. Yeah.
There's a
And you,
YouTube video online of an interview in his personal like fragrance study where he has like all his raw materials up and he's just like sitting at a desk and it looks like an old Italian apothecary shop. Oh, it is the best. And he seems like the nicest guy. I would love to sit and talk with him.
oh, he seems like he would be a delight to have a conversation with. He seems like a wonderful chap.
I'd like to cook with him, actually, now that I mention it, because he seems to have quite a great understanding of spices.
Yeah, that's his thing. That's his jam. He knows how to do the spice and do it well. Niall? Oh, thank you very much, Niall. Appreciate it. Yeah, and I just picked up... oh, here it is. I just picked up Arborist, of course, with Ryan's recommendation. That's my first. That's my entry into Joram Studios.
And I wouldn't have discovered Joram Studios without Pickwicks. So shout out to Pickwicks again, the live stream. But Joram Studios, Pickwicks carried it.
Adam, you're local. Have you been to Pickwicks?
No. Can you enlighten me on this? Is this a
Yeah.
shopping locale?
Yeah. So if you go to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, there's Pickwicks Mercantile, and they're one of the best. What's the word I'm looking for? I have a mental block, but they sell a lot of fragrances. They have a whole fragrance counter. They have all different sort of niche brands. We were discussing it earlier. They have Joram Studios. They have all
Wait a
these
minute. Something in New England carries Joram Studios. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So they have Joram, they have Santeria Novella, they have L'Artisan, but they're moving away from carrying L'Artisan. They're just burning out old stock. Which is kind of good if you want old stock with the older labels, because rumor has it like those have the pre reformulation. Maria Candida Gentile is there. Beaufort London,
I Profumi Florenzi. Who's the chap who has like the square bottles? He has Black Vines. What's the name of the house? That's there. What's the name of that house with the square black bottles with the gold label, and it looks like one of those little stamp machines to Black Vines. I feel like I'm on like a game show right now. What's the name?
Kerosene.
Kerosene. Yes. Spells
Kerosene. Fusotic, Bruno Fazzolari's renamed house. So so many. Actually,
so many.
Being in one place and spending an hour just smelling stuff, there's not a better place as far as like artisanal independent perfumery goes. So like
Dave, you know it. It's gonna drop panties near and wide. Spicy leads to panty droppy. Yes. I think he's just being silly.
I know he is. I know, but every time I see that phrase, it is the grossest phrase.
And the fact that it's still being used, like I still come across videos where people are talking about it. It still comes into conversation. Yeah, but Adam, you definitely have to check out Pickwicks Mercantile.
Well, I'm only a hop, skip, and a jump away here in Central Mass, so I'll make that a priority. And
I love going to the tea and spice shop there too. They have like really great tea there. Portsmouth is just a great place to visit.
Yeah, I'm just down the street from Portsmouth, practically speaking. So I'm in Portsmouth like almost every weekend, and absolutely wonderful.
Dave, all your panty dropper talk is hemorrhaging viewers. Now we're down to 17. How dare you? No, it's destined to happen towards the end. We're going to be on for probably about we'll give it about 15 more minutes to see if Tammie will join us again. Maybe in the least she can join us for the backstage. And Adam, you can join us for backstage as well. It's where we get to talk about all the things that we can talk about in a live setting.
Adam unplugged.
Yes. Yes, Betsy's awesome. And you are right. Now that I think of it, it does have kind of like that almost soapy outer layer to it that would kind of remind you of like a personal product, but in a really great manner. But it's really all about all these spices. Like everyone, you can like I can smell like oregano and basil and every little green leafy herb, and I can smell like cardamom and black pepper, a lot of black pepper, clove. Yeah, so good.
Something I wanted to say about Spezia, actually, now that you say it, is that it has one of the best extended dry downs that I've smelled in quite some time, and that's saying a lot because again, the sample drawer, it's horrifying, right? Like I go through so many, and this is quite a special one for me. And the even stranger part of it is that I could not really tell you why. I smelled it, and I guess that the most I can kind of speak to it on off the cuff is that it kind of struck that balance for me of blissful masculinity, if you will, like that kind of like this is appealing to men, without being like brutish, right? And also not being like too powerful. Like it kind of just wafted gently off the skin. It kind of behaved elegantly and with poise in terms of its performance. The smell itself was very complex, and this is again the deep dry down where all those blazing herbal and spicy top notes have long since passed, and what you're left with is this I don't know, just kind of handsome scent, and I'm sorry that that's such a general way to put it, but
no, I like that you use
the
the word poised, because I think that's a great way for describing Villaresi's approach. Is it is very poised. God, he does such great stuff. I want to try Ylang Ylang next, because like I'm on this Ylang Ylang kick now, and I'm like, what does he do with that? I want to know what he does with that one.
He respects what I like about his perfumery is because it's in that Italian aromatic tradition. He respects the notes very well in terms of giving like a three-dimensional version of each note, kind of
right
in conversation with one another. So it's I love fragrances that build very unified accords that might be like a single unified effect, but with his fragrances I always feel like I'm connected to these individual components in a way and having relationships with those apart from the conversation they're having with each other. And I think doing that well is something that's very difficult to do in a perfume, and he does it very, very well.
Yeah. He's just one of my favorites. He really is. I think that if I move, like I keep referencing Derek's Instagram live from last night, the whole A versus B thing, which I thought was just fascinating, like A connoisseur, B collector. If I move more to the direction of being just a connoisseur, that's what would be left behind. Like things like Lorenzo Villaresi and the fragrances that I have from him. I mean, I just love what he does. Do you have Alamut too? Alamut is really good. Alamut is a great. It's sort of like a chypre amber kind of hybrid with like some floral elements to it. It's really gorgeous stuff. God, there's just not enough time in the world to enjoy such beautiful things.
So I'm curious, I got to speak about two things that are on my mind lately. I'd be curious to know what both of you have been really into lately, if there's something that over the last few weeks have really just caught your attention.
Yeah, well, Holy Mountain, which I was mentioning earlier, from the brand or sub-brand Apotheker, Tepi, which is now under Pineward. Ryan recommended that I sample it, and back to Pickwick's Mercantile, they carry it, and I sampled it, and I immediately was like, holy crap, this is brilliant stuff. And then a week and a half later, I called them up. Hi, I'd like to buy a bottle. So that's one of them. What else? Oh, I found a bottle of Penhaligon's Elixir for a really affordable price, which is impossible. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. I blind bought it, and oh my God, I freaking love it. Because I love a lot of like Olivia Jacobetti. It is this sort of like wood sauna / camphorous incense / I don't know, woody, mysterious kind of thing. It's just so beautiful. And it's a Penhaligon's. And I found it for $130. And normally, now that it's been discontinued since, I don't know, 2016, 2017, it goes for like 300 something bucks. So that's another one. And what else? One that I did a review on this Monday. So for my vintage choice was Monsieur Couturier from Jean Couturier, a 1976 release. I got a splash bottle that I did a review of it on Instagram. You can look it up there, and it's this wonderful, spicy, smoky kind of leather from the 70s. It's kind of like a progenitor to Bellamy by 10 years. Kind of like a cross between like Hermes Equipage and Bellamy from Jean Couturier. So yeah, those are the ones that I'm really happy to have in my collection, that I didn't feel regret. I don't feel regret in adding them. They weren't, one might have been an impulse buy. The Elixir might have been an impulse buy just because I was in shock on Mercari that it was being sold for a third of the price. I mean, I just wish that I knew about it a few years ago when it was selling for $40, $60, but hey. So yeah. I actually haven't, Philip, I haven't actually tried. That's actually one of the Lorenzo Villoresi that I haven't tried, Tentanege, which is one of the most well-known of his. Ryan, have you tried Tentanege?
No.
That happens to be one of his best sellers too, is one of the most well-known ones, but
it does. I mean, there's a lot of Villoresi I need to get and try. To be fair, it's hard to find a good sample source for Villoresi in general.
It is.
So
thankfully that he does come up in discounters. It doesn't cost as much money if you are like, screw it, and you blind buy, which can't be said for some houses. But yeah, the only reason why I avoided Tentanege is because I heard that it was just so like plush, powdery, and feminine that I'm not sure it would, like, just from reading so many reviews, I probably would really appreciate it, but I just felt like, do I really want to blind to buy that and then realize that I'm never going to wear it at all?
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. That was my thought when I looked at the reviews of that one. I'm trying to remember which ones are on my list, but like Theseus, I think I want to try. There's a few.
Theseus is great. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But talking about fragrances, so I've been on Joseph's live streams a bit more recently, so I've talked about a bunch of things. The Holy Mountain Short and Sweet is like the best thing I've found recently, which is why I told JJ about it immediately after trying it. But there are two that I have. One of these I got in the same swap as I got the Falcon Leather that we talked about earlier. So I've been trying to get a handle on this, which is Diptyque Vetiverio Eau de Parfum, the one that released a little bit later. And again, I'm not the world's biggest vetiver person, so take this with a grain of salt. But I don't love the opening of this, which is kind of it's kind of citrusy in a way that reminds me of hairspray. I don't know exactly what it's doing in the opening, but I would say the dry down of this in the Eau de Parfum, I don't know what the Eau de Toilette is like, has this very rich, deep, earthy vetiver that I like quite a bit. A very raw vetiver in some ways that is intriguing. So I'm getting used to this. Now this other one, this just came in as a sample with something else that I got in the mail, and I sampled it the other day, and I've never heard of this before, but it's absolutely phenomenal. And I have never even heard of this house, which is I will type it in the chat, but it's Pineider, Pineider. And this fragrance is Nero Incenso, which is black incense, obviously. Absolutely wonderful. Hard to get. a bottle of, because the first thing I did after I tried this was like, oh, can I get a bottle of this? Not for less than $300, apparently. But
Oh God! Wow.
absolutely stunning stuff. One of the best incense fragrances I've ever gotten.
Peniter. For some reason, it sounds familiar to me, like I've read about it before. Hold on a second. I feel like if I look at the bottle, somehow I'll remember. Like I almost feel like, Ryan, I have a sample of this and I just set it aside for later. Hold on. It sounds really good though. I love my incenses. My God, do I love my incenses.
Me too. And this is just a really, really good one. Oh, it's just really good.
I think that
I
I
mean, there are
do.
a lot of good incenses in the world, so I probably don't need to obsess about just this one. But this one, I instantly smelled and was like, I really like this. So
I totally have a sample of this, dude. No, I have a sample of this. It's somewhere. And I was like, oh, I never heard of this house. I'll try that later. Now I want to try it.
try it, because I think it's really good. And I mean, I'm not about to spend $300.
No, I don't know about that.
But
it'll be nice to have that's why it's like, yeah, it's nice to have the sample.
Also, can I say this official sample is very generous? This is like a full.
I think that's what I have. Hold on, I need to get it. Guys, talk amongst yourselves and entertain the folks.
Are you an incense fan, Adam?
So it's funny that you ask. I think lately I've realized I'm not sure I am, actually. I always wanted to be because of such incense perfumes I discovered early on.
Yes, I do.
Oh, he has an announcement.
Got it.
Look. Hold on a second. Yeah, I have it. Oh, look. Yeah, I got it with like some order or something. Peniter Nero Incenso.
Only Jay would have like this level of like, oh, that random thing that I can barely spell.
I'm like, I was like thinking to myself, like, I know I have this somewhere. And I just didn't really know anything about the house. And I was like, and like the way it looks to me, I'm like, what is it? I thought it might have been kind of like bullshitty, like kind of like, another kind of like, here's another niche brand. Here you go. Like, so I didn't really think of anything of it. So I just kind of tossed this aside and I'll try it later. But I'll try this right now.
Yeah, it was the same thing to me. I sprayed it on paper at first. I was like, I'm going to throw this sample
because it's kind of like kind of tacky looking, like this thing. I was like, yeah. All right. Okay, I'm gonna spray it on a paper because I already have all that other crap on me. I'm gonna spray it over in the window over here because I'm gonna get a little overwhelmed with the fumes. Sprayed on my Crystal Fragrance scent strip. There's a plug for Crystal Fragrance. That's like a very. I love that opening. It's kind of like a sinus opening incense. There we go. Yeah. Oh, that's some molybdenum right there. Frankincense-y.
Yep.
Frankincense with cedar.
Yeah.
Oh man. FML. God. All right.
It's good. It's good though, right?
It is good. Yeah, it is good. Maybe, maybe what I can do is I can put it on my eBay, save searches, and maybe somebody will sell like a partial bottle or something. And I'm like, hey, I'm selling it for $90. Buy it now. Because I'm not going to spend $300 on anything at this point. So I'm going to put that over there and enjoy it again.
There are so many great incense fragrances, but Adam was saying he doesn't think he's a big incense guy.
Oh, no. I like how Philip didn't even need to worry about that because I just grabbed it. I brought the sample. That first impression would have won tonight. It would have been just, Ambre Loup would have been just behind it because that immediately was like, because I'm such a sucker for incense. I recently got into Le Liturgie des Eaux from Jovoy, which I love because it's like it has like the two things that I love: incense with pines and conifers together, and burning incense in the dark woods. That's another really good one. So I actually should probably do like an incense video. Just talk about all my favorite incenses because I got a lot of them. One of my favorite types of fragrances, honestly, are incenses. So I don't know if Tammie's going to come back. Just maybe later. Maybe maybe in the backstage, because like when we're on backstage, she'll realize that the live stream is over with, and we can just have her to join us then if she is able to join us at all. But is there anything else?
We could get like a cinematic camera pan, meanwhile in Tammieland.
How's she doing, in the kitchen there, with her dinner? Did she like step away to make dinner and eat it with her family and then she'd come? Yeah, well, I don't know. I'm not sure, but yeah. Do you guys have anything else to share? I think we all shared our recent picks. I don't know. There's like 20 people watching. I think we should bow out on a good note, right?
With the grace of the back catalog of Lorenzo's work. Yes.
Oh God, yeah. I also want to kind of try that weird Tropicana one. Like, you guys know about the Tropicana, Lorenzo Villoresi Tropicana? Like, it just sounds like it's something I would never be into, but because he made it, I kind of almost wonder if I'd like it. Like a tropical floral with like, I don't know, whatever is in it. Guava. Maybe guava's in it. Maybe I'll like his guava rather than the guava that pretends to be cannabis.
I have to imagine his version of that is just very different. Like it's like, like how Atman Zaman is like his like tobacco and incense fragrance.
Yeah.
You look at the pyramid and you're like, oh, okay, I've smelled this 100 times before. And then you actually get your nose on it and you're like, oh wait, this is its own thing. I feel like Tropicana would be its own can of worms.
A can of worms in a tiki bar with a Mai Tai. What you getting there? Or are you just putting something back?
It away.
I thought you were getting more. I'm like, okay, feel free. We're wrapping it up. So I hope that I'm going to be with you after we sign off, but I hope that you guys and everyone has a wonderful holiday season if you're here in the United States. And for everybody else, have a great week. And we'll be back next Tuesday. We'll be having Aram V with us, and he has a channel on YouTube. I think he has a channel on YouTube. I think so. He's on Instagram. And he is part of the live stream circuit, and many of you are familiar with him. He's a big enthusiast of a lot of the gentleman's classics of yesteryear. And we'll also have the Dry Down Lowdown. He is also known as DDLD, and he is on YouTube, and it will be a pleasure to have join us. So tune in then next Tuesday. Same bat time, same bat channel, and I hope that everybody has a great time of the day, whatever time of the day it is, depending upon where you are. I always want to say good evening, but I know some of our folks in Australia, it's lunchtime. So, all right, well, bye-bye. I promise you it's not the wine. I'm just tired. Bye-bye. Take care.